So this morning I want to position iCARE a bit vis-a-vis the settlement and the official language minority community program evaluation needs and approaches, and then talk a bit about the iCARE system in preparation of a session that we have this afternoon on using iCARE to measure performance of LIPs and RIFs. This is a pretty diagram, but it's actually full of information. iCARE is basically, we describe it as three types of information. Information about clients, which is the red circle here. Information about services, the purple circle, and then the network circle, which is sort of taking all of the organizations together that deliver predominantly federal services. And I want to remind you that iCARE was put in place with an expressed objective to gather information about performance of federal settlement and resettlement programs. So it has a modular design and was put in place gradually over time to effectively capture information on all direct service streams. But the way we did it, and I know this pains some of you, but I'll just talk about the detail a bit. For clients, we have a lot of information. We don't collect this. We actually do a linkage in order to determine the demographics of clients. But we also know about needs of clients because we have collect assessment information. We know where people are. We know where they start. We know where they move to. And we can extract information on them about what services they have taken, so specific to a person. We'll also have information on them that we can relate to the survey that David talked about a bit earlier. The other thing that's really important for us about the people that service providing organizations are serving is what's the track of their integration service use? So how do people go about collecting integration services, if you will? With respect to services, we know what types of services are being provided. We know the sequence, okay, that in which those services are being provided, combinations that people are using, and we know about what's called the intent. We call it the intensity of uses. So, how long do people stay in language courses, for example? The network is a little different, but we do have a description of the federal service provision network across the country. We know how it's split out geographically, and we'll come to that in a bit. We also know who our partners are, who in some cases we know about co-funding, we know about innovation within the sector. So but we don't know everything, and that's the gray part of what's on this slide. There are other funders. There are other service providers who are not federal service providers. There are LIPs, there are RIFs, okay? And there are people in the private sector who provide services to newcomers. We are going to do our best in order to link the information that we have to subsequent outcomes, but we can only do that for the people that we collect information about. iCARE is quite elaborate. This is an approximation to show what we can collect. So we collect information for all services, all streams that are in the settlement program. For those of you who are not familiar with it, that includes needs assessment and referral services. It includes information and orientation. employment-related services, language assessment, language training, and community connections, which which is just that. If you want to know more about it. But we also provide what are called indirect services, things like childminding, transportation, that sort of thing. And finally, there are now pre-arrival services delivered overseas. However, some of those are overseas on the ground. Others are overseas on the internet. So there's quite a distinction between those. So the main role that iCARE will serve in the evaluation is the provision of information about clients, about those services, as well as information about the network. Now, so how does iCARE do that? And the way I want you to picture this is if you put two boxes together, when they come together, they achieve a result. So you go from the red boxes to the blue circle. So basically, the data about clients, okay, this is one example. So if we talk about clients and link it to their demographic information, we can find out if services are relevant to people and what our reach is within the community. Okay, is everybody following me here? So I'm going to say namaste later. So this is how I want you to think about this. But if you go sideways and you look at sort of the demographic information combined with a consent for research, that allows us to do the supporting outcomes assessment that David talked about. Going down, okay, so it's kind of like swimming. I used to teach that. If you look at address information combined with consent for research, we can trace people. I'm sorry for that word. I haven't found another one. It's a statistical word. It allows us to see how people move, okay? We can follow their postal codes and see what changes are made. We can look at catchment areas of a service providing organization. So if we know where the location of service is, we can look at how far do clients come to see you. If we combine clients with where they live, again, there's a reach question, and there's also a question of efficiency. Are we providing services in the best locations at the right time? If we look at the service data, again, we'll be able to look at services combined with information about those services and link it to the outcome survey. We'll be able to look at how effective are services by looking at the type provided and how long people are in a program, okay? Now, when I say we, I don't mean me or David necessarily, exclusively. I also mean you, okay? So if I was a language provider, I would want to know how long someone is in a Link Level 2 class before they graduate to some other program. We can also look at efficiency. I don't want to focus on that. Okay, so with respect to the network, again, we can look geographically at the network and see what it covers and where there are concentrations of users or service provision, and again, look at reach, relevant delivery, performance, that is based on needs assessments and that sort of thing. Are the right services being delivered? Again, reach, etc. Now, I want to give you a few examples of so what. This is a very preliminary graphic, but what this does is it tells you, this is, I think, September 2015 data. It tells you about, let me just verify. Right, this is a map of service providers by province. So the number of direct service providers in each area. We could do this. In fact, I think this is for a particular, I think this is for NARS, if I'm not, I forget. Is this for NARS? This is all service providers. Thanks, Anna. Anna made the graphs. And I can't read the numbers, but there are some numbers on there. So this is basically the distribution of service providing organizations. So we can look at this detail nationally, provincially. We can look at catchment areas. We can profile clients within these same jurisdictions. We can go to a much finer level of geography. We can look at needs identified because and not just for CIC services, but for others because we ask those questions. So who needs, in addition to CIC services, housing or educational requirements? And we can also, with the information collected in the survey, see where there may be gaps in service. So, as I said, we can go to a much finer level of information. This is a snapshot of the Peel lip. Okay? So, Peel is a geographic region, and within that, you can see where clients are located, and the density of the clients is based on the degree of redness of the circle. And you can also see where service providing organizations are located. That's the pins, and the degree of services, the concentration of the SPOs is the darkness of the pin color. Now, a couple of very interesting things about this. You can see that there are, this is predominantly the white circles, there are people who don't live in Peel who use Peel services. Now, if we did this for Durham or for the City of Toronto or what have you, there would also be white circles or people who live in Peel who use services somewhere else. That's a very interesting piece of information. Is it because a service providing organization has a specialized service and is only available in more limited locations? Very useful. I want to move on from here. So these are the types of things that we will be able to do. Just for your information, we are planning to do things like this for all LIPs as part of the LIP assessment. One of the tricks will be to define the geography of a LIP. Vicky and Zaneta and the P2P team have already defined definitions for all of the LIPs in Ontario. RIFs are easier because they're usually the size of a province. But if you're a LIP outside Ontario, we will be asking you at some point. So tell me what area you cover. So just keep that in mind. Okay, this is a potential snapshot of a RIF with information and orientation clients. We want to focus here, for example, on people who have access to service en français. Et je suis très contente que c'est presque toutes les personnes qui ont besoin d'un service en français. We'll have to look a little more closely at that as we dive in here to see whether or not there is comprehensive or exhaustive service available in French for those who are looking for it. The other thing I'll just mention, we can also do this for services provided in other languages, not just English and French. So if we look a little more broadly, for example, Mandarin services provided in Vancouver, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, I want to talk shortly about access to iCARE data at the moment. We have some standardized reports that we do share with service providing organizations, and we are in the process of beginning to share what I'll call regional reports with our provincial colleagues, and we intend to share those more broadly as soon as we can. And I think over the course of the next few months, we will be moving forward with better information dissemination. I know that you all are waiting with bated breath to see some of it. We haven't had as much success to date in being able to publish the information. Right now, ad hoc requests are only processed based on internal demands. Now, I don't want you to think that we don't want to give you information, because that's not true. What is true is that administrative data, which this is, can be fraught with errors, not because you give us the wrong information, but because Jean puts a number in one box and David puts a number in another box, but it's the same conceptual number. So we have to be certain that the data is cleaned, and it's taken a little longer for us to do that than we originally anticipated. We will be building reporting on demand for service providing organizations, and hopefully we'll be able to distribute a significant amount of that information. In the first instance, I would hope on open data, the open data site that the federal government has. That's the easiest way to get access to data, particularly for researchers who don't care if the table is pretty. If you want pretty, it's going to take a little longer. So that's all I wanted to say this morning. I want to thank you for your attention. Obviously, if you have questions, we're happy to address them. And we'll talk a little bit more later this afternoon about more detail available for LIPs and RIFs. Thank you very much.